Whether your BTO has already reached MOP or is approaching MOP soon and you are thinking about upgrading, maybe to a bigger HDB or even into a private property, today I want to share with you some real market insights so you can understand what's actually happening on the ground right now and how it could affect your next move. Hi, this is Yvette and welcome back to my channel. In a separate video, I'll also be touching on affordability, how I've helped my clients upgrade without touching their cash savings while still keeping extra funds set aside as their safety net. So if upgrading has ever crossed your mind, make sure you stay till the end. Let's start with what everyone is talking about. Is the HDB market still going up? Instead of listening to noise and opinions, let's take a look at the actual numbers. So for the full year of 2025, HDB resale prices only grew by 2.9%. You may think, it's still positive growth there, but it's important to know that this is the slowest annual growth since 2019. And also, for the most recent Q4 2025, it recorded 0% growth, meaning prices didn't go up. They also didn't drop. They basically stayed flat. So compared to the strong run-up that we saw in the previous years, momentum has clearly dropped. Now, some people see this and immediately think, HDB market is weakening. But I want to be very clear here. I'm not asking you to panic sell because this doesn't mean that prices are crashing. It simply tells us that the market is no longer running hot. But the more important question is why? So let's zoom out and take a look at the bigger picture. So if you see this chart, you'll notice something very obvious. In 2021 and 2022, we saw a very sharp spike in prices, about 12.7% in 2021 and 10.4% in 2022. This wasn't normal market behavior. This was largely driven by COVID, construction delays caused massive BTO backlogs, and also, border closures caused many who were shuttling between JB and Singapore to buy homes locally, plus very low interest rates at that time. So buyers had very limited supply and a lot of urgency, so they could only turn to resale flats, hence pushing the prices up. Fast forward to today, the landscape is very different. In 2025, the full year growth dropped to just 2.9%. Quarter by quarter, 1.6, 0.9, 0.4, and Q4 flat. So we are no longer in that post-COVID spike phase. And being on the ground, we can feel it. Enquiries are slower, viewings are fewer, buyers are taking more time and they have more negotiating power. More units staying on the market for longer, and also HDB valuations are becoming stricter. So again, today's market is not crashing, it's stabilizing. And this is exactly why today's upgrading strategy cannot be based on what has happened in 2021 or 2022, because the market environment now is completely different. Let me give you a simple example. A potential 1% drop may not seem like a lot, but that could mean 50 to 80,000 less in terms of cash proceeds from your sale, and that directly translates to a higher top-up for your next purchase. So let me ask you, if that 50 to 80k difference shows up, will it affect your upgrading plans? If you are unsure of what your next step is, whether to sell now or whether upgrading is comfortable for you financially, feel free to reach out for a consultation and we'll map it out properly. Now, with prices stabilizing, the next thing I always look at is policy. Because cooling measures are never permanent, they are adjusted based on market conditions, and that is why this article caught my attention. So this policy was originally introduced when resale market prices were getting a little too hot. If you are a private property owner, you had to wait 15 months after selling before you could come back to buy a HDB. This was done to cool demand in the resale market so prices don't run too quickly and become unaffordable, especially for first-time buyers. Now, this article is saying it may be relaxed before 2027. We are already in 2026. I don't have a crystal ball, but the fact that this being discussed right now is interesting because typically cooling measures only get reviewed when the market starts stabilizing. So this isn't a prediction, but it could be an early sign that policymakers are becoming more comfortable with where the resale market is heading. If you are thinking of offloading your HDB and upgrading, timing becomes important. Besides policy, the next big factor shaping the resale market right now is supply. So let's take a look. HDB is on track to roll out about 55,000 BTO flats from 2025 to 2027. And on top of that, February BTO launch, we are seeing more projects with shorter waiting times of less than 3 years, even with one project less than 2 years. So comparing this to the COVID period where BTO waiting time was easily 5 to 6 years, buyers now have more options and they no longer have to wait as long. So change of thought process, many buyers now think, since it's only 2 to 3 years now, we might as well wait. After all, BTO is also cheaper, which means some demand will naturally shift away from resale. And when that happens, resale prices come under less pressure. So when you put everything together, slower price growth, rising BTO supply, and possibly deliberate policy moving to moderate resale prices, you can see a clearer picture forming. This isn't random. It's a market that's gradually being guided into a more balanced phase, which is exactly why understanding these signals early matters, especially if you are planning your next move. So moving on, this chart shows the correlation between BTO application volume and resale prices. Whenever there's a surge in the BTO applications, the resale price growth tends to slow shortly after. Why? When more people apply for BTO, it tells us two things. First, buyers are willing to wait. Second, they are choosing new flats over resale. Also, cost is much cheaper, so demand starts shifting away from the resale market. And when resale demand softens, price growth naturally cools. You do see an exception during COVID. Between 2020 and 2022, that was because of construction delays and very uncertain waiting times. Buyers couldn't afford to wait, so many were forced into resale instead. But outside of this period, the relationship is quite consistent. BTO applications go up and resale price growth moderates shortly after. And in 2025, you can also see that the prices are starting to moderate again. Not just because of BTO, but also sale of balance flats. So in 2025, there were more than 10,000 sale of balance flats being released on top of the ongoing BTO supply. At the same time, BTO application rates are still holding up. So now, buyers have two alternatives. Newer BTOs with shorter waiting time and also SBF units that are already completed or almost ready. Which means fewer buyers are moving towards resale. And when resale is no longer the only option, price pressure naturally eases. This combination, strong BTO take-up rate plus a big SBF release, helps explain why resale prices are moderating now. But that's not all. There's actually another wave of supply coming into the market. Newly MOP HDB flats. In 2026, over 13,000 flats are expected to reach MOP, almost double compared to 2025. These are spread across towns like Punggol, Queenstown, and Tampines, which means one simple thing. More owners become eligible to sell, more potential listings, more choices for buyers. So now, I want to show you a chart that shows something interesting. During COVID, especially 2020 and 2021, MOP supply was already coming in. But BTO construction was delayed and waiting times became very uncertain. So buyers had a problem. They still needed homes, but they couldn't afford to wait or simply didn't want to wait for BTO. So they turned to resale HDB. Now my question is, what is the next most attractive option in the resale market? MOP flats. Youngest lease, just 5 years in, relatively new condition, many in good locations. So a lot of buyers shifted straight to MOP resale, and that is why the prices spiked during that period. But however, fast forward to today, BTO supply is coming back. Waiting times are shorter, sale of balance flats are available, and now a large batch of MOP flats are coming into the market. So buyers no longer have just one option. When buyers have choices, urgency drops, which is why as BTO supply increases again in 2026 and beyond, resale price growth starts to moderate. And this is really the next phase of the HDB market. So let me ask you this, would you rather be the one and only seller in the market, thereby you can command the price? Or would you rather be one of the many sellers trying to offload at the same time? Because that difference could cost you time, longer time to market and sell, or cost you money, potentially 30 to 50k in terms of price adjustment. Now look at this, in 2025, even before the big MOP supply comes in, resale volume has already dropped by almost 3,000, and that's the lowest since 2020. And this is important because volume usually moves before price. This tells us that buyers are already becoming more cautious, they are comparing more, they are taking longer, they are no longer rushing. So this volume drop is an early sign of where the market is heading before price. And when you layer the upcoming MOP supply on top of this in 2026, that's when the impact on resale dynamics becomes more meaningful. Not a crash, but a clear shift into a more balanced, buyer-aware market. So to summarize, price growth slowing, BTO and sale of balance flats increasing, resale volumes already dropping, and a larger wave of MOP supply coming next. All these are early signs that the resale market is shifting, not collapsing. So for HDB owners, this is where strategy becomes important. You want to cash out at stronger prices before the growth slows further and competition increases. And at the same time, reposition when buyers, like yourself, have more choices, developers are still launching at lower land costs, and financing conditions remain relatively favorable. It could be to swap to a private when the growth is slow, or swap to an EC when the land cost is still relatively low. And also, while financing conditions such as the interest rates still remain relatively favorable. And that's what I mean by sell high, buy low. It's not about timing the exact high or the exact bottom, but moving early when the data starts turning. And I also want to be clear, this won't apply to everyone. If your flat just reached its MOP and you aren't financially ready yet, that's okay. If you're happy staying put where you are, that's fine too. But if upgrading has crossed your mind even ever so slightly, this is the phase where clarity makes a big difference. So if you are a HDB owner and you are unsure on how to move forward, whether to sell now or whether upgrading makes sense for you financially, feel free to reach out to me for a consultation. I'll be more than happy to walk through your options properly. So, thank you, and I'll see you at the next one.